Threatened to cut ties with my mom if she mentored my bully. Now they have taken everything until I talk, and I'm planning my escape. I'm an 18-year-old guy, and my mom, who's in her 40s, works as a teacher at my school. At our school, there's this special elective where you can be a teacher's aide during your elective period. It's usually reserved for the teacher's favorite students. You help grade papers, make copies, mentor other kids, that sort of thing. At the start of the semester, I found out that my mom had picked Dave, a 17-year-old, to be her aide. The thing about Dave is he's made my life miserable since middle school. Since 6th grade, he's bullied me relentlessly, physically and emotionally. I don't even want to get into all the details of what he's done, but I'll just say everyone knows about it, including the school and my parents. There have been meeting after meeting with administrators, suspensions for Dave, but nothing's ever stopped him. Since we started high school, I don't have to see him as much, which has been a huge relief, but every time I do, it's a fresh hell. When I found out Dave was going to be my mom's TA, I was shocked, and honestly, I felt completely betrayed. It hurt so much. How could she choose to spend extra time with someone who's made my life so awful? I confronted her, asking why she wanted to mentor him. She told me she already taught him in one of her classes, and that beneath it all, he isn't really a bad kid. She said he has a terrible home life that, for privacy reasons, she couldn't explain to me, but it allegedly makes him act out like this. For context, my mom has always tried to help kids with difficult backgrounds. Still, I reminded her of everything Dave had done to me. Her response? She said she understood, but insisted he needed help right now. I kept pushing, asking her why it had to be her out of all the teachers and staff at our huge school. Why did she have to choose him, knowing what he's put me through? She told me to stop being selfish and claimed that some kids have it harder than I could imagine, and she was just trying to help in the way she could. I was brutally honest with her. I told her if she kept Dave as her aide, she would be dead to me. I said she was making a choice between him and me, and if she picked him, she would no longer be my mother. I swore to her that if nothing changed by the time I turned 18, I would move out and she would never hear from me again. She just rolled her eyes and told me I was just being dramatic. After a few days of me giving her the silent treatment, she grounded me. It did nothing but make me more sure of myself. Then my dad stepped in, tried to force me to talk to her. I refused, so over the past few weeks, they've systematically taken everything from me, my car, my computer, my guitar, and even my art supplies. Now, I'm stuck coming home from school, going straight to my room, and I'm not allowed out for anything other than dinner until I start talking to them again. What they don't realize is, every punishment just makes me more resolved to go through with it. I sit in my empty room every day, silently counting down the days until I turn 18, knowing I'll be gone and they won't see me again. Sometimes my mom comes in crying, begging me to talk to her again, and I'll admit, that makes me feel guilty. But she still won't remove Dave as her aide, and I can't get past that betrayal. Am I taking this too far? I just don't know. All I feel is completely betrayed. Update 1. I just kind of freaked out when everything blew up out of nowhere. There were a few times I almost deleted my post because I was genuinely scared someone at school would see it and recognize me. All those voices telling me it wasn't my fault helped more than I can say, and it made me feel a little less embarrassed at the thought of someone I know stumbling upon my story. Honestly, nothing has really changed in my life yet. But so many people made a good point. If I'm going to take control of my future, I need a real plan for what comes next. I thought about the military, because quite a few people suggested it, but then I remembered something about my school, a special trade program we offer. In this program, you spend half the day at my high school, and the other half over at the community college, taking trade classes. Depending on the track, you can graduate with an associate degree or the certifications you need to start a career straight out of high school. Today during lunch, I decided to go talk to my guidance counselor. I told her I wanted to switch into that trade program. She looked genuinely surprised and asked why I wanted to make such a big change now when I'm already loaded up with AP classes and set for the college track. I told her flat out that I didn't want to get into the details, but I needed to be ready for independence once I graduated, and this seemed like the best shot I had. She told me it might be too late to transfer this semester since courses had already started, but she'd look into it, and let me know. Now, all I can do is wait and see if she can make it happen for me. Update 2. A lot has happened since last week, and while nothing is truly fixed, I feel like things might actually be moving in the right direction for once. On Friday, I was pulled out of class unexpectedly and sent to the guidance counselor's office. When I walked in and saw my mom already sitting there with the assistant principal, my stomach dropped. The counselor asked me to sit down, then told me that switching from the college track to the trade track, like I'd mentioned before, was a big decision. She wanted to make sure my mom and I really hashed it out together, to determine if this was the best choice for my future. She turned to me first and asked me to explain, fully, why I wanted to switch. So I laid it all out, my entire side, from the way I'd been punished and how it felt like I was living in a house where my interests and independence didn't mean anything. I said, honestly, that if I was going to be treated this way, I just wanted to become independent as soon as possible, and that college would only make me reliant on my parents for even longer. Then the counselor invited my mom to at her side. She tried to downplay everything, making it seem like I was just stubborn or being disrespectful, but as the questions kept coming, It became obvious to everyone in the room that my version of events was the real one. At that point, the assistant principal stepped in and said outright that a teacher's aide, a grown man named Dave, wasn't worth this level of chaos. He promised Dave would be switched with another teacher and wouldn't be around anymore. The counselor asked if this would help me start working things out with my mom. I told her honestly that it wouldn't make much difference, because it wasn't my mom's decision. She still hadn't admitted she did anything wrong. The counselor asked my mom if she'd be willing to apologize for anything. My mom gave a half-hearted apology, saying things got out of control and she never meant to hurt me that much. The counselor then turned to me and asked if there was anything I'd like to apologize for, but I said no, and, thankfully, nobody pressed the issue. As far as my transfer went, it was too late for that this semester. The counselor suggested that for the rest of the semester, my mom, my dad, and I'd try family counseling. I'd stay in my current classes, my parents would give me all my stuff back, and we'd try to see if it was possible to come to some kind of peace before next semester rolled around. She asked my mom point blank if she'd accept my class changes if my mind still hadn't changed after counseling. My mom started to say no, repeating that she wanted me to go to college, but I cut her off. I told her she'd already failed me as a mother once, and to please not do it again. After that, she got quiet and, finally, said she'd agree to my decision if that's what I really wanted. When I got home, all my stuff was waiting for me. That same day, I started talking to my mom again, not because I forgave her or felt close, but because ignoring her just didn't seem to serve any purpose anymore. I don't treat her like a mother now, just someone else living in the house. If she asks a question, I answer, but that's it. Now that I have a plan for myself, most of my anger is gone. I just see her as another person. We haven't scheduled our family counseling session yet, and honestly, I don't expect much to change. The damage has already been done, and I don't see myself changing my mind. Update 3. I thought things were going to settle into boring and tense, and then this week happened. Monday morning, I got called down to the office again. Same counselor, same assistant principal, but this time the head of IT was there too. They asked me if I'd ever had access to my mom's gradebook or her classroom computer. I said no. They asked if I'd ever seen anyone else on it. I said I've seen a million kids in there over the years because she leaves the door open during lunch, but I never paid attention to who was at her desk. That's when the AP told me there'd been an audit. Grades in my mom's class were changed, and it was done under her login during the period Dave used to be her aide. I didn't know what to say. I just kept repeating I didn't know anything. They said they believed me. When I walked out, my mom was sitting in the secretary's chair with both hands around a paper cup, and she wouldn't look at me. By lunch, everyone knew she'd been put on administrative leave while they investigated. By last period, everyone knew Dave was suspended. Walking in the door that afternoon felt like stepping into a house I didn't recognize. My dad was at the table with his tie loosened, staring at his phone like it had personally offended him. My mom was on the couch, still in work clothes, still not looking at me. She finally asked if I told them anything. I told her I told the truth, what I know and what I don't. She asked me if I could at least tell them she never kept her password written down. I said I wasn't going to lie for her. She cried, and my dad told me not to be cruel. I said I wasn't. Then I went to my room. We had our first family counseling session the next day anyway, because it had already been scheduled. The therapist didn't know about the investigation until we told her, and then she just let it sit there for a minute, like she understood that any other topic would be avoiding the point. She asked my mom to explain what helping looks like to her. My mom started talking fast, like she had in the counselor's office at school, and by the time she ran out of breath she'd said she'd been giving Dave rides after practice sometimes, bringing him food, letting him sit in her room during lunch when he didn't want to go home to eat, and once or twice letting him stay after hours so he could get his head right and not go straight back to whatever was going on at his house. She kept insisting it wasn't what people would try to make it into, that she was just trying to be a safe adult. The therapist didn't accuse her of anything, but she did say the words boundaries and power dynamic enough times that I could tell it landed. My mom said again she never told him any passwords. The therapist asked if she ever left her computer unlocked when she stepped out. My mom said everyone does. The therapist said, that doesn't make it okay. After that session, I was walking to the parking lot when I heard someone say my name. It was Dave, standing by the chain-link fence near the baseball field with a security guard hovering at a distance. He looked smaller than I've ever seen him. He said he wanted me to know he told them I didn't have anything to do with it, or my mom either. He said he was stupid and changed 2 quiz grades for himself and printed a copy of a test for a senior who promised him a pair of sneakers, and he only got in because my mom keeps a sticky note taped under the keyboard with the same password she's used for everything since freshman orientation. He said he was trying to get leverage to keep his aide spot because the new teacher they moved him to was weird about him being around. He said he told them he did it, and that he was going to own it, and that he was sorry for everything in general, not just this. And then he said, they're going to think you did this to her. Just be careful. I didn't say anything heroic. I asked him if someone had told him I wanted to hear this, and he shook his head and said no, he just didn't want me to think he'd burned my mom on purpose. Then the guard told him it was time to go, and he walked off. That night, someone wrote snitch on our sidewalk in chalk, big enough that the whole block saw it when they left for work in the morning. My dad was out there with a hose before sunrise, scrubbing like it was going to turn into carved stone if he looked away. He wanted to call the cops. My mom told him to let it go. He ended up filing a report anyway. When I pulled out for school, a couple of juniors from my math class slowed down as they walked past and stared into my car like I was a zoo exhibit. I went to the counselor again and told her I couldn't wait until next semester to start building something of my own. She put me in touch with the coordinator at the community college who runs the trade partnerships. He said I couldn't jump programs midstream, but I could enroll in an evening OSHA 10 and basic shop safety class that meets twice a week, no high school credit but industry recognized, and that if I stuck with it he had an HVAC lab assistant position open to students who pass. It pays, not a lot, but money is money. I signed up the second I got home and paid out of what I've saved from summer jobs. The first class is next week. He also told me about a local sheet metal place that takes on helpers after school for 4-hour shifts, no experience. I called, the foreman told me to come by and sweep floors and get yelled at like everyone else, and if I don't quit, they'll keep me. I start Friday. My dad and I barely talk, but after dinner last night he came into my room and closed the door and sat on the floor like we were doing a stakeout. He said he didn't like the way I talked to my mother, and then, for the first time since all of this started, said he also didn't like the way my mother handled any of it. He didn't apologize. He just looked tired in a way I've never seen. He asked where I planned to go when I moved out. I told him about the sheet metal job and the night classes and that I was going to stay in the spare room above the garage at my friend's house for a while because his dad said I could give him a little rent, and he'd consider it a favor he was happy to do. My dad stared at the posters on my wall and asked if I'd be willing to keep the car in my name if they took themselves off the insurance for a while. I said I'd figure it out. He nodded, stood up, and left. Today, the district sent an email to parents saying they take academic integrity seriously and that a teacher had been placed on leave while they investigated potential grade tampering. No name, but they didn't need to include one. By third period, a sub was in my mom's room. I walked by and saw a box on her desk with a stack of framed photos on top, me in elementary school with a missing front tooth, my parents at a state park, a class photo from a year I don't remember. For a second, I almost went in and took the one of me out of the frame and put it in my backpack. I didn't. I don't feel triumphant. I don't even feel vindicated. I just feel like I've somehow been moved into a different track without touching the rails. It's quiet here in a way that isn't peace. It's just a new kind of noise I haven't learned yet. I'll go to my shop safety class next week. I'll sweep floors at the sheet metal place and learn the names of tools I've only ever seen on YouTube. I'll sleep in a different house soon with a different kind of silence. If my mom asks me to lie, I won't. If she asks me to show up to whatever hearing she'll have, I'll sit in the back and listen and leave when it's over. I don't know if she'll lose her job. I don't know what happens to Dave. I just know I'm done letting any of them decide what my life is going to be. Update 4. Friday at the shop was a wall of noise I didn't know machines could make. The foreman pointed at a push broom and a pile of scrap that looked like someone had fed sheet music into a wood chipper. They call me high school like it's my legal name. By the first break, I had a cut on my knuckle from being stupid with a banding strap and a piece of tape around it that smelled like electrical fires. Ray, who has a tattoo of a pinup girl that's now just a blur of blue on his forearm, told me not to ever reach under a sheet that looks like it's floating. It's not, he said, and flicked it with a fingernail so it sang like a bad cymbal. By lunch I could tell the difference between the scream of the shear and the thunk of the Pittsburgh machine by feel in my chest. I swept and emptied a trash bin that probably weighed as much as me and, when I thought I'd done enough, got handed a magnet on a stick and told to go walk the parking lot for screws. I found 12. The OSHA class started in a windowless room that could have been a church basement if you replaced the hymnals with safety glasses. The instructor is a retired guy named Delgado who has all 10 fingers and pictures of other men who don't. He didn't show them to be shocking. He put them up like yearbook photos and said names, where they worked, what went wrong. Between the slides and the stale coffee, I felt my shoulders unclench for the first time in a month. Everyone there was a version of me I could recognize. 2 landscapers still in grass-stained boots, a woman in scrubs who said she was sick of nights, a kid younger than me who kept biting his thumbnail until it bled. We practiced picking the right respirator by fit instead of fear. I went home smelling like cutting oil in the inside of a toolbox and fell asleep before I could even plug in my phone. Monday morning, my mom got a letter that made the house go silent. Certified mail, pale envelope, district letterhead. Notice of intent to dismiss. There's a hearing date, a place, language about due process and an opportunity to respond. Her union rep called while she was still holding the paper. I could hear the careful voice through the kitchen doorway, the kind of careful that means bad news you can't say out loud. My dad put his hand on the back of a chair and left it there like he needed to steady it or himself. 2 periods later, a push alert popped up on my phone from the local station, the app I forgot I even had. District investigates grade tampering, teacher on leave. They used a stock photo of our school marquee with the letters half fallen off and a quote from a parent, about trust. My math teacher turned the projector on to work through a proof, and someone in the back did that little ooh sound you make when someone drops a tray in the cafeteria. I kept my eyes on the board. It didn't matter. The assistant principal asked me to come by after last bell. HR was there this time, a woman in a suit who shook my hand like I was older than I am. They told me I might get a subpoena, not to scare me, just so I'm not surprised. It's not a criminal case against my mom, they kept saying. It's policy. It's standards. Dave has his own juvenile thing, sealed, not my business. They asked if I'd observed anything else unusual in my mom's room when I was there before any of this. I said I didn't hang out in her room. They nodded like they already knew that answer. The HR woman slid me a sheet with a date and an address in case I wanted to attend the hearing. You're not required, she said, but we think it's fair you know when it is. That night, Dad and I moved my stuff in the slow way that makes less noise. He wore his tie like he forgot it was on and carried boxes down the stairs with his jaw set. My mom sat on the third step and rolled the corner of the certified letter under her thumb until the blue paper inside started to show. She asked if I had blankets. I said yes. She asked if there was a lock on the door. I said yes. She asked if I wanted the picture of me with the missing tooth or if I wanted her to keep it. I put it in the top of a box without answering. At the driveway, my dad handed me a small envelope with my name written like he was afraid of the pen. It had an insurance card and a $100 bill folded around it. For gas, he said, like he had to give it a specific job so it didn't feel like the wrong kind of help. When I backed out, my mom stood up like she was going to walk to the car and then sat back down. The porch light made her look like a person in an old photograph. The room above my friend's garage is bigger than it felt when we were 10 and used it to play video games. The carpet is the same beige that burns your knees if you slide on it. There's a plug-in heater that hums like a refrigerator. His dad came up with a set of sheets still in the plastic and made an awkward joke about rent checks bouncing, then stuck a phone number on the mini fridge that says call this if the heat goes out and left me to the sound of trucks downshifting 2 streets over. I set the framed toothless picture on the windowsill facing out. I didn't turn it around. I went to the hearing. Not because anybody made me, just because the idea of not going and then wondering what was said felt worse. It was in a boardroom nobody ever sees unless something bad happened, with those overly tall chairs that make everyone sit up straight. My mom wore the dress she uses for open house nights and her union rep sat beside her with a folder of tabs. The district had printouts, screenshots of logins and timestamps, a photo of the underside of a keyboard with a pale yellow sticky note taped to it, handwriting that looks like my mom's grocery lists. The IT guy explained that a password taped to a district device is the same as leaving it on a whiteboard. The policy is the policy. He didn't sound like he wanted to hurt her. He sounded like a person reading a weather report everyone can see out the window. The board members were polite and looked at the ceiling when the word boundaries came up. They said that there was no evidence of a relationship beyond poor judgment, that the student had admitted to unauthorized access, that the question in front of them was trust. The union rep talked about 20 years of good reviews and mentoring awards and a pandemic that ate the rule book. She said mitigating factors enough times that the words lost shape. In the end, it wasn't a decision yet, just the announcement of a recommendation and the option to resign. My mom's mouth did a small thing I didn't recognize and stayed like that until the meeting adjourned. On my way out, I passed Dave in the hall with a woman who looked like him around the eyes and a man with a county badge on his belt. He didn't see me, or he pretended not to. He had that fresh haircut you get when someone else pays for it and hands you a receipt. Later that night, a text came from an unknown number with 15 digits like it came from a landline somewhere. They're putting me in a program, it said. Community service, counseling, no school access. I told them you didn't do anything. I keep telling them. I didn't answer. He sent one more, hours later. I'm sorry, it said. I don't know for what order. Then nothing. At the shop, Mike let me do something that wasn't sweeping. He showed me how to feed a strip through the beating machine without letting it jump and bite. He stood behind my shoulder with 2 fingers barely on the back of the metal like he was guiding a horse. My hands shook just enough that I felt it in my forearms. When it came out with clean ribs, he nodded once and walked away, which I realized is the equivalent of a hug there. Ray told me I could have a milk crate to put my stuff in if I put my name on it. I printed it like a first grader on a strip of duct tape and stuck it on crooked. On my second night of OSHA, Delgado made us all take our gloves off and close our eyes and touch the table with the pads of our fingers. Know them now, he said. They change on you. I wrote my name on the inside of my new steel-toe boots with a Sharpie and felt, for about 20 seconds, like a person who might actually be good at something. 2 days after the hearing, 2 people from somewhere with a state seal on their badges came to our house to ask questions. Not cops. Not exactly. They asked me if I ever felt unsafe in my mom's classroom, if my mom ever talked about students in ways that made me uncomfortable. They asked in a way that made it sound like they were fishing with a net too big for the pond. I told them the truth. That I don't go in there. That I didn't see anything. That I think my mom wanted to be the good kind of adult and forgot that it's not about what you want it to be. They wrote it down and thanked me and left footprints of wet February dirt on the entry rug. After they were gone, my dad stood in the doorway with his hands in his pockets and didn't move for a solid minute. My mom washed her hands for so long the water went from hot to cold and back to hot. The first paycheck from the shop was a paper slip I picked up from a metal mail sorter near the clock. It was less than I imagined and more than I had 2 weeks ago. I took it to the bank with fingerprints still in the dust on the back of my hand and paid my friend's dad in cash for rent. It felt absurd and adult at the same time. On the way home, I stopped at a guy's garage 2 towns over and bought a dented red toolbox with a missing tray from a listing I found on my phone between classes. He was a retired guy who kept giving me free handfuls of fasteners like he was feeding pigeons. "You'll need these," he said, and I didn't argue. I put the toolbox in the trunk and drove back to the garage room and sat on the floor and opened and closed the drawers like maybe this was how you start a new life, one drawer at a time, metal on metal, the weight of what you put in it making the slide smoother. I don't know if my mom is going to sign the resignation or wait out whatever the board decides. She doesn't ask me to lie. She doesn't ask me for anything, actually, except sometimes whether I've eaten, like that's a loophole we can still use to talk. I show up to work and then to class and then to the room above a garage that hums and clicks when the temperature drops. I keep my car keys in the dented red box because it feels safer to tuck them into a place built to hold tools. If someone hands me a statement to sign, I'll read it and decide and not ask anyone what they think I should do. There's a new noise here I'm starting to be able to name. It's not peace yet. It might be the sound of my own life, starting badly but starting anyway. Update 5. I figured the week would be simple: learn to run a seam without letting the metal chatter, keep my head down, sleep in the heat humming room above a garage. Monday morning made other plans. Mikey from the office stuck his head into the shop and yelled over the machines that the district put in a rush ticket for our company. One of the rooftop units over the science wing was short cycling and the maintenance guy didn't want to touch it. Ray pointed his chin at me. Field trip, high school. Walking into my own school from the back service entrance with a tool bag on my shoulder felt like breaking into a place you're technically allowed to be. The custodian with a ring of keys the size of a salad plate signed us into a clipboard I've never seen in 4 years of being sent to the office and swiped us through a door only teachers use. The hall smelled like floor cleaner and pencil shavings and the ghost of adolescent gym socks that clings to all schools, hot or cold. We took the service stairs instead of the elevator because Ray doesn't trust anything that moves quiet by itself, and when we came out under the roof hatch the air bit. My teeth. The unit in question was humming and then choking and then humming again like it didn't know if it wanted to work or smoke. "Kill it," Mike said, and handed me a multimeter. I did what Delgado had walked us through in class in a room with plastic ducts and no wind: lockout/tagout, test for power anyway, verify you're dead before you touch anything that could make you not. My hands weren't as steady as I wanted, but steadier than last week. When we popped the panel, a drift of leaves fell out with a baseball that must have been living in there since fall. Mike laughed like it had told a joke. We cleaned the contactor until it looked like a piece of something worth using and replaced a capacitor that had bulged like an angry tick. It wasn't hard, not really. It was just a lot of small, careful things in the right order. Every tiny click sounded like a word I was learning to pronounce. From up there, looking over the lip of the roof, I could see 3 different versions of my life at once. The marching band practicing figure eights on the field, the math wing where I sleepwalked proofs all last year, and the row of classroom windows where the blinds never quite shut and you could catch a sliver of someone's world if you wanted. 1 floor down and 12 rooms east, my mom's room, my mom's old room, had the lights on. A sub stood at the front reading from a printed lesson like an actor with a script they got handed 5 minutes ago. On the desk by the window were 2 banker's boxes I'd seen her pull out only at semester breaks when she moved the clutter around so it looked less like clutter. Between them, my elementary school face in its cheap black frame, missing a front tooth, my eyes so wide it looks like I was surprised by my own smile. "Stop sightseeing," Ray said, smiling without teeth. "You're on the clock." We got the unit purring like a big cat that was finally warm. On the way back down, the custodian's keyring chimed against his belt. At the second floor landing, he paused because there was a woman trying to balance a stack of spiral notebooks on her hip and push open a door with her elbow. He reached past her and held it. She said, "Thanks," without looking. It was my mom. For a second, I forgot I was sweating through a shirt with our company's name on the pocket. She looked past me at the bag in my hand like it might be something dangerous, like maybe I'd come to tear up the HVAC with my bare hands. Then she saw the patch. "Oh," she said, and then, of course, and then nothing. Ray is not a person who likes standing still in a hallway where emotions might happen. He said he'd go sign the work order and disappeared around the corner with the custodian. My mom shifted the stack of spirals and one slid off and hit the floor. I picked it up because gravity is faster than whatever it is that keeps people from doing the simple thing in the moment. She said she could carry them to the car if I could could I pull the door, just hold it open, please? So I did, and she passed through, and we walked like strangers who share a house we don't want to be seen leaving together. The parking lot made our shoes sound too loud. She put the notebooks in a box that used to contain copy paper and pulled the flaps together like she could shut truth inside it. The certified letter from last week was on the passenger seat with a coffee ring on it like maybe that made it a different letter. She didn't ask if I was going to the hearing because there wasn't a hearing anymore. I signed, she said, and looked at the windshield to tell me. Resignation. The union said it was safer than writing it out. Her mouth did the small thing I don't recognize again. When she looked at me, it wasn't pleading. It was like she was counting the seconds I'd stand there and give her. "I'm not going to ask you to say anything you don't believe," she said, and then she ruined it by reaching into the backseat and bringing up the frame with the missing tooth picture. She held it like a person holds a small animal they want to show you will not bite. "Do you want to take this?" she asked, "or should I keep it at the house?" I took it because leaving it sitting in the sun on her backseat felt like a logic puzzle with only bad answers. The glass was warm. She didn't reach for my arm or say my name. We stood there for one more beat of air, and then she said she needed to get the rest before the final bell. I said I had to get back to the roof. Neither of those things were true. Both of them were. On my way back in, the assistant principal was coming out with a slim man in slacks and a leather folder who looked like the word compliance. He glanced at our company patch and then at my face, and a muscle jumped in his cheek. "Mr. High School," the AP said, because he still only knows me as my mom's son. The man with the folder took out an envelope and asked my name the way people at blood drives ask if you've ever been to Europe in the 80s. The subpoena was light, almost a joke in paper form, telling me my presence was requested for a state licensing board hearing next week. "You're not in trouble," the AP said, the same voice they use when a kid pukes in the hallway. I put it in the same pocket as my meter because it was the only flat thing on me. After dinner at the garage house, spaghetti with jarred sauce that tasted like the kind of charity nobody talks about, my phone buzzed with a number that made my stomach go sideways. Not Dave. A reporter. She said my name like she was practicing it, said she was doing a piece on teacher accountability and support systems, and wanted to talk about what it's like to be caught in the middle. She promised off the record, then on deep background, then just 5 minutes with the recorder off, and I said no all 3 times and then stopped answering when the questions turned into the kind that are just different ways of asking the same thing. She texted later anyway with a link to the story that went up without me. It had a photo of our marquee with half the letters fallen off, just like the TV station. It used my mom's name and said the board had accepted her resignation. It didn't say mine. At the shop the next day, Mike let me do the whole run on the beater while he pretended not to watch. The strip walked a quarter inch to the left at first and tried to knife me, but I corrected and it calmed down. When the ribs came out clean, he did the thing where he doesn't say good but he also doesn't say anything else, and that was enough. At lunch, Ray cut a sandwich in half with a utility knife like a surgeon and said the county was going to be sending us more school work because once one unit gets attention all the other principals remember theirs we's too. "Don't go getting a big head about being a specialist," he said. "You aren't." The hearing was in a beige building that could have been a county health office or a place where deeds go to die. The room had a flag in the corner and a microphone that made everyone sound like they were underwater. The panel looked tired and their pens all clicked in a weird little chorus whenever someone took too long to say what they meant. The rules were read like the start of a game nobody wanted to watch. My mom sat with her union rep again, hair scraped back so tight it made her eyes shine more. Dave wasn't in the room because this wasn't about him, but I saw him in the hall before we went in with a guy who had a counselor face and a badge that just said first name last name in block letters. Dave's hands were in the sleeves of a court-issued sweatshirt and he was looking at the floor like it might tell him something. When it was my turn, I got called by my full name and put my hand on a Bible and said yes even though I don't. They asked me 3 questions. Did I have access to my mother's classroom computer? No. Did I ever see a password written down? No, but that wasn't a lie exactly because I never looked under her keyboard. Did I ever feel like my mother crossed a line with students? I said I didn't go in her room at lunch or after school because she told me since freshman year that I should make my own space and let her kids have theirs. The woman in the middle of the panel asked if it felt like she chose them over me. She asked it like she was asking about the weather out a window we were all looking through. I said that wasn't the question you were here to decide. They didn't decide that day. They don't do TV endings where a gavel hits wood and a life changes. They take it under advisement and then send you a letter that arrives in a pale envelope with a state seal that looks official until it gets a coffee ring on it. When I walked out, Dave and his counselor were by the soda machine you have to hit before it gives you your drink. I thought he might talk. He didn't. He put $2 in like it was a complicated math problem and didn't get either of them back. That night the garage room smelled like dust and new heat and the plastic off the sheets my friend's dad bought me. I put the picture of the missing tooth on top of the dented red toolbox facing the door this time. It made me laugh a little, not because it was funny, but because there's something ridiculous about being threatened by the eyes of your own ghost. Thursday was the night I finished OSHA 10. Delgado handed out the cards with the same ceremony as someone giving out something you can't exactly hang on a wall but might save your hand from being a wall. He shook my hand and said there was a spot in the HVAC lab if I wanted it. Tuesdays and Thursdays, light inventory, moving parts from shelves to carts and sometimes explaining to guys twice my age that a manometer is not a thing you use to see if the air is sad. It doesn't pay much, he said. I told him it paid more than watching videos at home and smelling the room I sleep in. I start next week. He gave me a key fob that opened the back door of the lab and it felt heavier than anything that small should. On Friday, I was on the roof of the gym instead of the science wing because apparently all our rooftop units are held together with gum and hope. The county had a crew of community service kids scraping gum off the bleachers below like a punishment that was also a metaphor. Dave was one of them. He kept his head down and chipped away and the gum made that horrible sound when it lets go, a noise like a small animal giving up. On my way back to the truck, I took the long way along the fence line because you can tell the truth and still not want to walk straight through it. He looked up because my boots were loud. He didn't do the thing where he reaches for absolution like it's a paper he forgot to turn in. He just said he heard my mom resigned and that he told the counselor he knew it was his fault the way the dominoes fell. Then he said he was going to a transitional house 2 towns over until the court decided where he should be when he wasn't scraping bleachers. He said he doesn't get to come back to school even if he wanted to. He said this last part like he was reading the label on a can. I don't want anything from you, he said, before I could form my mouth around not much. I just didn't want you to think I was hiding. You're not, I said, and it came out true. He nodded like that was a grade he could live with and went back to picking at gum that had probably been there since before either of us. Over the weekend, someone egged my parents' house. Not with the cartoon splat everyone laughs at, with rotten ones that smelled like sulfur when they hit and slid. My dad texted me a photo, his face half in the window like he forgot the camera reverses the angle. He said he called the cops and then deleted it and then sent another text that said, simply, fixed. Sunday night, he pulled up by the garage room and handed me a manila folder with my name in the hesitant pen again. Insurance papers. A photocopy of the title with the car in my name. A check for a number that scratched something in my chest when I saw it. Your mother's looking for something in the meantime, he said, not clarifying whether something meant work or forgiveness or a way to get from morning to night without the house sounding empty. He didn't come up the stairs. He looked at the window with the plug-in heater glow and nodded like the light could nod back. Monday morning, a rumor turned into a line on an agenda. The board is going to talk about a new policy, the kind with capital letters and a number at the end, that spells out aids and passwords and locked doors and who can sit in whose room at lunch. It will pass because these things always pass after the thing they would have prevented already happened. The kids at school will joke that the rule is named after my mom like the kids 4 years ago joked that the fire drill was for the toaster explosion in the cafeteria. It will sit on a PDF no one reads until someone trips over it again. At the lab on Tuesday, Delgado showed me where the filters live and where the filters go when they're tired. He told me I can wear headphones as long as I can hear my name if he says it. A kid in a hoodie too thin for the weather asked me how to tell the difference between a Phillips and a square drive and then said never mind because the shapes make more sense when you're holding them. I scanned a shelf label with a scanner that beeped like a little bird. It felt like something that would take me from one place to another if I let it. After class, I drove by the school because muscle memory is a thing you have to work out of your legs. The lights in my mom's old room were off. Someone had taped butcher paper over the window and written in black marker, inventory only. It looked like a joke sign the theater kids would have put up during Tech Week, except this time it wasn't a performance. In the reflection on the glass, my face looked older than it should, or maybe just less practiced. There's a new sound the roof units make after you clean them. It's quiet enough that you only notice it when the other noises fade. It's a kind of evenness, like a level that isn't a bubble anymore, it's just flat because it's right. I hear it now sometimes when the garage heater kicks on and when the beater runs smooth and when I put the key fob against the lab door and it clicks without arguing. It's not peace. Not yet. But it's not a warning beep either. It's something that keeps running even if you walk away from it, something that doesn't need you to stand and listen to know it's working. I'm not calling it my life out loud. I'm just letting it be what it is and trying not to touch it with hands that still shake a little when I take the panel off.